Yeah. All right.
So I'm going to start the broadcast, which means people can hear us talking.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. If somebody can click on the little hand and raise it to make sure that you can hear us before we start, I'd appreciate it. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate your help. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I have 10 o'clock on my computer. So welcome, good morning to everyone online. I'm Janelle McCoy with the Mid-Atlantic Geospatial Transportation Users Group, and I'd like to welcome you to the webinar entitled Accessibility Measurement Made Easy with Sugar Access. Thank you for being with us today. Just some short announcements before we get started. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available at the magtug.wordpress.com website shortly after today's live broadcast. Please visit our slightly redesigned website for more Mid-Atlantic geospatial transportation goodness coming up in 2017. We have an exciting webinar schedule starting the year off with a bang with at least one webinar each month through May. MagTug has at least 2 information exchange meetings in the works for later in the year, so please sign up for email updates on the website, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned. If you're interested in making suggestions for future educational events, we invite you to attend the next short MagTug Steering Committee teleconference on Tuesday, January 31st at 10 a.m. Please contact me, Janelle McCoy, through the website by clicking on my picture and then clicking on my email address to send me an email. I would like to welcome MagTug's new sponsor, Autodesk, and our host for today's webinar. Autodesk makes software for people who make things. If you've ever driven a high-performance car, traversed an impressive bridge, used a smartphone, or watched a great film, chances are you've experienced what millions of engineers, artists, and designers are doing with Autodesk software. Elliot Rosenfeld from Autodesk is my co-host today. Elliot, would you like to say anything to our audience?
Thanks for the introduction, Janelle. I just wanted to say hello to everyone and thanks for tuning in. And I am personally looking forward to hearing from Robert and Matt at Sugar Access. And, with that said, I'll turn it over back to you.
Okay, thank you, Elliot. As always, we ask you to participate in today's webinar by typing questions that spring to mind throughout the webinar in the chat box at the bottom right of the Go to Webinar window. I or Elliot will read back your questions at the end of the webinar so that everyone has the opportunity to hear the answers and better understand this great tool. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Robert Collier from City Labs. The mission of City Labs is to empower those who shape the future with impactful mobility analytics tools. The company engineers software, analyzes data, and provides professional services to understand, model, and predict the movement of people and goods. Their products and services provide the backbone of operational and predictive transportation systems in more than 2,500 cities in 7 countries across 6 continents. Wow. Robert will walk us through Sugar Access, an amazing ArcGIS add-in from City Labs that allows planners and transit engineers to understand the public's ability to walk or bike to their daily errands, analyze the benefits of bike infrastructure improvements, and compute the increased accessibility resulting from simple transit improvements. Accessibility, as many of you know, has become an increasingly popular topic and metric in transportation planning. Metrics such as access to jobs and accessibility scores have become a popular way to determine how well our transportation systems are delivering people to the desired destinations. Accessibility scoring is even being used in real estate for gauging desirability of property. This presentation highlights an easy way to conduct accessibility analysis using a prepackaged and integrated data source, model and prepare future scenarios, and integrate with ArcGIS Online to easily share the benefits of a project with the public or stakeholders. Robert, the virtual floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. As we just heard, accessibility has become a new metric that we're using in the industry, and it really is a great way to move and advance beyond level of service and things like that. So as we're talking about accessibility, it's really about how do we get to and from an origin and a destination and the value of those. Fortunately, with me today, I have our Sugar Access product manager, Matt Pettit, joining me. And he's really the guru of both accessibility and sugar access at City Labs. So without further ado, I will let Matt take it away and begin our presentation.
Thanks, Robert. As Robert said, I am the product manager for Sugar Access. So I work on a lot with our development team on all the improvements that we're consistently making for the add-in, as well as talk with our customers about potential features that they like, and also their their daily workflows that they're working with, so that we can constantly help them in the work that they do. So as you heard from both Robert and Janelle, this is about accessibility, but I think it's more of we can really put it in a more simplistic manner and define it as it's a measure that examines both land use and transportation systems. And just kind of on that piece, I think my background is transportation, and we talk to so many government organizations, and there's a huge wall between land use planning and transportation planning. So really, when we talk about accessibility, we're talking about hopefully bringing those two together and connecting them to have a unified platform for doing planning within GIS. So accessibility, it's not just, we're more than looking at land use and transportation systems, but rather it is the ease of reaching valued destinations. So it could be, jobs, it could be your grocery trips, but every trip that we're making throughout the day, that is a necessary trip for that person. So as planners, as a government, we need to make sure that our transportation system and our land uses are connected in a sense that it allows people to easily get to those destinations that are important to the people. So accessibility may be different. We can measure it for different transportation modes. It could be walking, biking, driving. It could be, it could be caused by traffic. So it might have low accessibility during rush hour, but high accessibility in the off-peak time. Or it could be with regard to, whether service workers can get to and from their jobs if they don't have a car at night. So all these different problems and issues can be described through accessibility. So what we do is we take our background in transportation planning software and we apply it in a way so that planners and GIS users can actually make these types of maps and do these types of analysis in ArcGIS. So a lot of this came about from walk score. So I'm sure everyone knows what walk score is, and it has become a really, popular thing, not just in looking at real estate, but also in a planning context that we want to build walkable areas, bikeable areas that people are, are more likely to walk to their destinations than maybe drive. And that is, do I have a lot of destinations such as grocery stores, restaurants in my immediate vicinity, and can I get to those? So what we like to do is we want to put that power and that idea in the hands of planners and GIS users so that when we're planning for a city, that we're actually using those ideas in the planning context. But how we differ a little bit is we really want to take into account everyone's potential trip that they can make. So we really want to understand, if I live in a particular location and I use the transportation system, how far can I get to using that transportation system? And then based on how far I can get to using the transportation system, are there ample amount of destinations that I care about that I'm going to be able to get to? So while we're looking at, analyzing one person's home location and understanding how they travel, we're also looking at different people's home locations and how they travel. So what we want to do is we want to take these concepts and apply it in organizations' workflow with city planning, transportation planning, and really understand how our different projects, and not just what's going on today, but how our future changes that we're making to the transportation system or land use system is affecting these things. So maybe calculating the number of jobs that are accessible and how that's changing with the projects that we're implementing. It may be scoring accessibility on daily errands, recreation, and other types of trips. Or measuring things like transit travel time to schools or hospitals and making sure that there's a minimum amount of walk time for kids to get to their school. So we really want to not just have do that baseline analysis, but actually have a proactive scenario-based tool that we're able to look at all these different ideas and plans that our organization has and actually lay them out in GIS in a very intuitive way so that we can give these, break it down back to the decision makers so that they can really make a good decision with regards to accessibility. So the output and what we're getting out of something like Sugar Access are accessibility maps, and by keeping it open, we are not only measuring accessibility but understanding who has accessibility and where there might be deficiencies in our transportation and land use system. So later on in the webinar I'll be going into Sugar Access, or rather just ArcGIS, to show some stuff in there and show how we get to these points and get these maps. But as you see in the table in the top left, we're also taking into account the demographics that are making up these accessibility maps. So it's really to empower the data that you already have, whether it be census data or other types of land use data, and to put that in terms of and mesh that with the transportation data that we have to give a clear picture of what's going on in your city. So why it's so important to do this is that we all know that GIS is very powerful. So the more maps, more graphics that we can make to support the projects that our planners want to push forward, the better chance they have of pushing those forward, and the better chance we're going to have the active community engagement, create ArcGIS maps that are in ArcGIS Online that are just a click away for users, but also kind of localize it. We can quantify the benefits of specific projects for specific neighborhoods to really have that community engagement and have it be very positive. So as I was saying, we can make these maps to ensure that we have, we can demonstrate where there's, good accessibility. It could be that accessibility needs to improve to specific areas. So relating it back to specific points of interest. So one of the big benefits of Sugar Access, and I'll show later, is that it already comes with the data that you need to do this type of analysis. So things like points of interest, point layer shapefile that has all the hospitals, schools, restaurants already geocoded is something that's really great and something that we can automatically tie into, right out of the box to do these types of analysis where I'm looking at, what's the minimum travel time to get to a hospital using public transportation, and to use that as a tool to move forward on, how could, for my planners is how could I actually maybe improve my transportation system and implement specific projects to see where accessibility and where the ease of travel is improving based on the types of projects that I want to implement. So when I was talking about having a scenario-based tool, we want to look at scenarios such as, if I'm implementing a citywide BRT project, that I can actually see how this project is affecting different neighborhoods and improving accessibility or not improving accessibility for specific areas, but then also look on how that's going to be affecting the demographics or specific communities to really dive deeper into the environmental justice analysis and Title VI analysis that we already do today. So now I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS and kind of show what's actually going on behind the hood with Sugar Access. So what we're looking at right now is Sugar Access works in ArcGIS Desktop Basic. There's no extensions that are required. So Sugar Access as an add-in, it shows up like other add-ins. So you have a drop-down menu with Sugar, and there's two aspects of Sugar Access. One is the so-called the Sugar Network Editor, and what that is, it's a transportation-specific editing tool for transportation networks within ArcGIS. So as you all know, it can be a bit tricky with transportation data within ArcGIS because it's multi-layered. And when I have a roadway network, it's not that it's just a flat roadway network, but that roadway network is connected, and we need to understand how it's connected. Is that an overpass or is that an intersection? So I have links, I have nodes, and I need to understand how all of these are connected. And then if I add in a public transportation system, I need to know if that public transportation system is on top of the road or is it next to the road, and how they are actually connected. Is there a transit stop there or is there not a transit stop there? So all of these issues that people might have within transportation networks are solved with our Sugar Network Editor and bringing in these data types. So we actually have a specific type of geodatabase that's specific to city labs, and that geodatabase allows you to see the transportation system as you're seeing it today. So the screen that you're looking at is in Madison, Wisconsin. It's bringing in both the roadway network, and that roadway network is data that is provided through Sugar Access. So Sugar Access is subscription-based, and the real benefit is that we provide all the data that's necessary to do these types of analysis. So one of those things being a all-roads street network from HERE, the navigation company. So if you dive deeper into the network, really there's no better clarity that you're going to get from a network than HERE's network. So I can dive all the way into a parking lot, and I have every single link in that parking lot to describe the transportation system. On top of that, we And if I go into, say, a link in that transportation system, it's not only geometric described in ArcGIS, but you also have all those important attributes of the roadway network, such as to tell me, is that a walk link, or is that a street where only cars are allowed? So we're using all this information within ArcGIS to better our accessibility analysis. What you're looking at in orange is the transit network. So we use something called a GTFS feed. That's a Google Transit Feed specification. And anytime that you're on Google Maps and you're looking up transit routes, it's actually referencing this thing called a GTFS file. And that GTFS file is typically produced by the Public Transportation Agency. And what that really has allowed the industry as a whole to do is to have better data about transit in GIS. So we take the local Google Transit feed and actually bring that into ArcGIS as a editable transit network that you can actually put your hands on and edit. So, if I look at a specific link, we're going to go through something called the Sugar Feature Explorer. So imagine your attribute table, but on a multi-level basis. So not only am I looking at a highway link, but that highway link is tied to a highway node. And if I go down to a transit line, I'm going to have different attributes of that transit line. I have the actual line attributes. So I have to say, okay, well, this is the mode of that transit line. And then I also have things like the headway or frequency, so how often the bus comes. But then I also have stuff that I need to define on the node level, such as whether this node is a stop node or not a stop node. So whether there's a bus stop there or whether there's not a bus stop there. So this multi-level aspect of Sugar really allows us to control and actively edit full multimodal transportation networks. So those are two of the aspects of Sugar Access, of having the data right there. What I'll also bring up is the points of interest layer. So this is just another point feature class within the geodatabase. So if I actually open it up just within the attribute table, I can see that it's already pre-populated with all of these points of interest. So it could be gas stations, schools, ATMs. So every single point of interest in your community is already geospatially in this database that we're using to analyze access to destinations. And the last piece of information, although you probably already have it, is land use data. So as a default, we use the census block information, so that has all your socio-demographic information defined at the census block level. But since we're integrated here with Esri and ArcGIS, users are able to use any feature class, any polygon feature class that they have to do the accessibility analysis. So what the accessibility analysis is really analyzing the travel times between every single zone or polygon feature class within your area. So if you're looking at a census block and I'm doing an analysis, I'm calculating on the back end within Sugar Access the travel time using this multimodal transportation network between every single area or city block. It could be parcel in your community to do this analysis. And what it really looks at, or what it really looks like when you're doing the analysis is quite simple, and that's one of our goals, is that this is not, it can be a great tool utilized by GIS folks, but it can also be a great tool used by planners to do these types of analysis. Because now, if I have a data package that's already pre-populated with a transportation network land use data that a planner can actually come in here and do a particular analysis that they want to look at. So it could be, if I have a question about grocery stores, and if I want to understand how if people are able to walk to grocery stores in my community, and really what's the minimum travel time that people have to walk to grocery stores from their local neighborhoods. So we are now in something called the Sugar Launchpad, and the Sugar Launchpad is basically a scenario builder. So you can build all these different scenarios of things that you want to analyze within the Launchpad. And we'll kind of run through what we're doing here, but some of the things are the type of analysis that you're doing. So if I want to look at travel times between land uses and destinations, I'm going to choose travel time. And then what I was saying before is that this is very much an open system. So here it's asking for the analysis polygons, which is really just a polygon feature class. So I'm referencing these points of interest zones. So once I reference this, I can actually choose any type of destination that's defined within that feature class. So I have all the information about my points of interest already defined within that polygon feature class. So I could do an analysis of accessibility to clothing stores, pharmacies, grocery stores, but everything is already defined so that a user can just go through and choose the type of analysis that they want to look at. Like I said before, this is very multimodal in nature in that I can, not only just look at auto accessibility, which is the auto accessibility actually uses congested travel times on the links. So it's not just using the speed limits to do the analysis, but rather the congested travel times from here, the navigation company, which already has all that data. Could be a bike analysis, it could be a transit analysis, so we're actually using the transit network, as well as understanding someone having to walk to the transit stop to make that trip, and understanding all aspects of the trip to do this. So as I said before, accessibility can be measured at different times of the day. So we can do an AM analysis or a PM analysis. So this is going to affect, the travel times that are being used for the road network. If it's congested at that time, if it's not, is there ample public transportation at the off-peak period? These are the types of questions we can start to answer. But you'll see also you'll have other file references. Excuse me. And these are referencing the data that's provided for Sugar Access. So the goal is to provide the data that's able to be referenced such as this, so that people can just start using running scenarios. And then users can also change things like what's the walk speed or bike speed that I'm using. And you also notice that we have an option to upload to ArcGIS Online. So when a scenario is actually ran, what you get back is a polygon feature class of the accessibility analysis. And within this, there are a few other feature classes that are actually, excuse me, can be uploaded to ArcGIS Online, so that you can automatically create these accessibility maps if you so desire. Or you can bring that back into ArcGIS Desktop as well. So one of the big features is, so if I already have chosen my scenario that I want to run, I choose to save that and then run that, cross my fingers. It's actually running, everything is running in the cloud. So all your data is hosted locally. But when I decide to actually run analysis, so if you're running a geospatial analysis within ArcGIS, everything would, kind of freeze up on your computer. Now you're doing this analysis, you're running an ArcPy script, and that's all done on your computer. With Sugar Access, we recognize the need for, cloud computing, and also the need to do multiple analyses at the same time. So all of the analyses are run in the cloud, and it will, so right now it's zipping up all the necessary data to run the analysis. It will upload to our servers, which are running on Amazon, and it will run the analysis. And once the analysis is done, you'll have all your completed runs here. And I have the option to download that information, or if I chose to have that information uploaded to my ArcGIS Online account, then I have the ability to do that here. So if I go back, so this is just creating one scenario, but I have the option to create any scenario that I want. So maybe we allow our planners to actually take hold of this and to do actually create some of these scenarios of the different types of questions that they want to ask about how efficient their transportation system is for getting to land use, or are there particular deficiencies that we really want to look at. So now I want to look at the actual network editing aspect, which I'm sure everyone is a bit curious about. So if I dive in deeper into my network here, we can see the roadway network and the transit network. What we'll do is we'll start editing my transit network. So you start editing just like a normal feature class. If you're editing within ArcGIS, you'll see now that I have all these tools now activated. So for transit, we can edit a transit line, we can add a transit line. For the roadway network, we can build a new link, we can add a node along the link, we can split a link. So every function that you need for editing a transportation network is here within the Sugar Network Editor. So say that I want to add a transit line and kind of have that, or build a scenario of what will happen when I add a bus route out to a particular community. Is this going to be helpful? What's going to happen? So it's very intuitive, and that if I just click along the roadway network, that it'll automatically route that, and I can go along and make my transit route. So once I have once I'm satisfied with the transit route that I have built, I can come in here into the Feature Explorer and determine what's the headway, what's the name of the line, what's the runtime. If you're just doing scenario analysis, it'll actually use the travel time of the underlying roadway network to determine that. But everything is there for you to do these types of scenarios and answer these types of questions of what if I build this, what if I build that. And it's the same thing with the roadway network. So we can actually come in here and edit the roadway network as well. So if I start editing this and say that I have a pedestrian path that I want to build upon. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to have to redefine everything. So one of the great things about the Feature Explorer is that I have the option to copy the attributes when I build a new link. So all these attributes of, yes, a car can drive on this road, yes, a pedestrian can walk on this road, are being copied when I build this new link. So if I add a roadway link, it'll snap to the current transportation network and say that we're extending this path to this other place. I'm going to finish the sketch. It's going to ask me what the node numbers are. But you'll also see what's great is that it knows that that there might be an intersection here, And that's something that, this is huge for transportation editing, of knowing whether, something's connected or whether it's not connected. So we're actually looking to see that, yes, I do want to make an intersection here because I'm building a new walk path for this community. So I'll click yes, and it will automatically make that node on the transportation network here. So now if I actually go into the link that I just created, you'll see that, it split this other link, which is great. But you also see that we have all the attributes hopefully already defined. So here I did a one-way link. So one of the big problems with transportation editing is that a roadway is not one way. A roadway is typically two ways. I can drive on either side, but the features or the attributes of that might be different. So there might be different things such as the traffic. If I want to look at inbound versus outbound traffic along a highway, those attributes are probably going to be different. So if I actually go in and grab a particular roadway link, you'll see that it's actually a two-way link, but it's one feature. So if up here, I can actually look at, this is one link, but it's actually described as two because I'm looking at both the inbound and outbound direction upon that link, which is great. So now I'm going to back out. So that was the Sugar network editing aspect of Sugar Access, which really allows users to, as I said, look at any type of changes to their transportation network. It allows people to manage their transportation network that they're looking and actually do analysis actively on it. Because it's not, when we do the accessibility analysis, it's not just looking at what's going on today, but we want to understand what's going on tomorrow when, there might be future projects, land use projects, transportation projects that we're looking to implement. So say that I ran an accessibility analysis and I get that information back. What does that look like for the user? So we have here, so I've now loaded this feature class. Obviously, I've put some symbology on it to make it look nice. But if I open it up, what it's doing is it's just appending the existing polygon layer that you already have. So this could be your local parcel information. It could be a local land use information that you guys have within your own GIS shop that you want to utilize. So what it will do is tell you for every census block, every feature in this case, how many jobs do I have accessible from that census block, or what that minimum travel time is to get to a grocery store. So all that information will now be embedded within those feature classes for you to use and to create maps. And we get a lot of, I would say, sometimes we get pushback on, it might be a planner who's doesn't use GIS as much, but what we're really trying to do is to keep this really open that, everyone may want to create their own maps or kind of mess with the data themselves. So we really try to give that as much information as we can to the users so that they can do it as they see fit. But we all know that, we need to kind of deliver that information to some higher ups. So we try to do as much kind of summarizing of the analysis as we can. So whenever you do an accessibility analysis, you'll also get back some summary tables of, what's kind of the overarching statistics of the analysis. So here I'm looking at all the different socio-demographic groups that are already described within my my polygon layer that I have. It could be census blocks, it could be parcels again, census block groups. So what it's doing is, since I did, say, an analysis of accessibility to jobs, it's now summarizing that analysis for every single socio-demographic group that I already have described. So now I understand, how accessibility is different for households with different ages, so it could be looking at ages that may be more susceptible to having accessibility issues. So maybe those people don't have a car, maybe those people have to walk to school. So maybe I want to look at, okay, how does the travel time, walking times to schools differ by age groups? And do I have ample accessibility for kids who are under the age of 16 for them to actually walk to schools? So all this information is being compiled so that we can get those answers, or we can understand, do people, do disadvantaged communities have ample access to accessibility? And if there are particular areas of, that are lacking, what might be an issue? Is there potential for a public transportation line to go out to that area? Or what can we do to solve that problem? Looking at some of the other features and capabilities of Sugar Access, here we're looking at something called the accessibility calculator. So this was, I can do my travel time analysis of what's the minimum travel time to get to a hospital, grocery store. We also have something called a destination summation. So I want to ask more of how many destinations do I have accessible. So it could be jobs, it could be acres of parks if I have that information described. But we also have something called the access score. So this is going back to when we were talking about walk score and understanding how people can get to all the different destinations around their community, and can I actually walk to those destinations, or do I have to take a car? Because maybe that has a lot of policy implications for my decision makers on on traffic and those types of things. So what the access score does is it allows you to analyze access to a different set, or a compilation of destinations. So I can actually build a analysis of accessibility to different types of destinations, such as here I'm looking at not only just one destination, but it could be stores, performing arts centers, restaurants, parks. So all of these different destinations are now going to be put into one analysis where I'm actually understanding, do people have access to their daily errands? So that's something that we're really pushing as the access score, as a way forward for people doing transportation and land use analysis.
So are there any states or anything you're working with right now on utilizing accessibility, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So right now we have been doing a lot with the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia, my apologies, with their Smart Scale project and their project prioritization process at the state level. So what their issue was, how do we, not only do the analysis, but how do we put these types of decision-making tools into the hands of those people making the decisions, which are much more at the local level. So we actually have had an enterprise agreement with Virginia to actually supply Sugar Access to any government within Virginia, so they can look at the different projects that they're putting forth in their prioritization process, and how those are affecting accessibility, since that's a key component of their prioritization process. And I think with that, I wanted to leave time for questions, so I will turn it back over and see if we have any questions from the audience.
Thank you very much, Matt and Robert. Everybody was so excited to see your presentation. They haven't taken time to put any questions in. If everybody wants to type in the chat, we'll read those. I do have a few questions, though, while we're waiting for those. Virginia has given that capability to all of its local agencies, but how would we get started if we were a local agency wishing to use Sugar Access? Is there, you mentioned cloud processing. Is all the data available with Sugar Access for planners to just get and use?
Yeah, and that's what we really strive to do, is to have a scalable solution that works throughout anywhere in the country and really anywhere in the world. So all of the data that I was talking about, having the roadway transportation data, the points of interest and land use data, all of that data is available in the same format across the country. So there is no IT requirements in terms of having even cloud processing power on, for the organization. All of that is a part of the Sugar Access package for users to have. But some of my presentation was keeping in mind that there is a lot of, every time we go to a local organization, and I think Esri knows this as well, and they'll talk about this, is that, all the local organizations have kind of the most accurate, the best data available, especially in terms of land use information and those types of things. And what we want to do is we want to keep an open system so that people can actually utilize that information in a very helpful way. So while if your organization getting started with Sugar Access, you have that capability from the get-go of doing these types of analyses. But especially planners working with their GIS team, they can start to achieve these other types of analysis that they might have always desired doing by using the tool.
So the really cool part is evaluating future scenarios. So we have access to getting the existing data, as Matt said. What we don't have is every comprehensive and land use plan. Each government or organization has that, and they can take a look and actually project what the improved accessibility would be in the event or at such time as the land use plan is built out, which may include redeveloping brownfields and greenfields. So that's how they can actually get a better understanding of what these projects mean, and they can better value and sell to the community and the elected officials who vote on these projects what that improvement would be.
Wonderful. Actually, we do have a question from the audience. As you probably know, ArcGIS Pro is becoming more and more prevalent. People are moving towards that because it's an easier interface. One of our audience members asked that they said they thought your tools were very robust, but can you discuss plans on how your product would interact with ArcGIS Pro in the future?
Sure. So one of the things I didn't mention is that we're a business partner of Esri, and all of our software platforms, not just Sugar Access, utilize ArcEngine, the ArcGIS platform within it. So our development teams are constantly in contact to make sure that all of our products and platforms work within the any ArcGIS environment. So as you saw today, it was working within ArcGIS Desktop. But that is something that we're looking towards in the future of, how do we integrate with ArcGIS Pro? And I think that's something that Esri is working on, as well as how do they take all of these add-ons that are available within ArcGIS Desktop and start shifting it to ArcGIS Pro. I think, as many of you know, it's been a bit of a slower process for, whether it's people moving to ArcGIS Pro or Esri themselves, but I think it will be a process of taking these add-ons and then integrating them with ArcGIS Pro. But I do see that happening in the future.
Wonderful, that's great. I think we have a follow-up question from Justin. Once an analyst does some work or creates results in ArcMap, how do you typically see this info being shared with non-GIS users?
Sure. And that's kind of the beauty of putting it back into ArcGIS format, whereas we can really do anything with it, whether that's creating a customized map on ArcGIS Desktop with our symbologies and making a PDF or a map out of that. But I think everyone really sees the benefit of putting things into ArcGIS Online, and that's why we wanted to have that integration with ArcGIS Online, that it's automatically, can upload some of your results in ArcGIS Online so that you can easily create maps there and share maps, with a click of the button. So I don't know if maybe a lot of you noticed that my presentation, that was my first presentation before I went into ArcGIS Desktop, was all within ArcGIS Online. So I think the real goal is to be able to start creating those types of presentations, and applications within ArcGIS Online that are really palatable to our decision makers and those people that we're trying to get that information in front of, that they can really just click a link on their computer and start understanding, what we're doing within ArcGIS and how powerful that is.
And from a community engagement standpoint, it really can get the communities involved as well, where they can look at if the government organization put together a storybook of different projects they're looking at. It can be an interactive tool for those residents living or employers in those regions to actually understand and have some tool to play around with for each of those projects to understand them a little better.
Wonderful. So we're just about out of time. I try to stay away from this, but is this sort of something that is has an annual subscription to it, or is there a different procurement vehicle for local communities, planners to access this? Obviously, we could work with our DOTs and state governments to try to get a plan worked out, but go ahead.
Sometimes that's a little more difficult, but the Commonwealth of Virginia took that approach where we had met with the Deputy Secretary of Transportation for the Commonwealth of Virginia and a bunch of folks, which is how they really became the first statewide license, if you will, which is great for all of the government entities within the Commonwealth. When we look at most other states, however, they're not quite there. We're very happy to meet with the state DOT, regional MPOs, or even cities and towns to get them up and running in Sugar Access. But it is an annual subscription, and the benefit of that, we actually go in and update all of the data annually. So that updated GTFS information for up-to-date transit info. You get up-to-date points of interest. More importantly, you get up-to-date speed info. So as roadways become more or less congested over time, all of those speed variations get accounted for in the updated network. Additionally, populations and land uses change, that all gets updated, as well as new roadways and trails and things to that nature. So that's why we do have it as an annual subscription, and we can work with any number of users from one up to an enterprise solution, which would give limited access to the users.
Oh, good to know. Thank you very much. I think with that, we are out of questions from the audience, and you definitely answered and showed a really wonderful application here. Thank you very much, Matt and Robert from City Labs, for being our presenters today, and thanks to Autodesk for sponsoring our webinar today. I hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar and will join us Tuesday, February 21st for our next webinar on managing the street excavation permitting process in the right-of-way by Bob Poliska from JMT Technology Group. Many of you actually were logged on a little past my initial preamble, so I also want to invite you to attend the next Shore MagTug Steering Committee teleconference on Tuesday, January 31st at 10 a.m. You can contact me, Janelle McCoy, through the website, magtug.wordpress.com, by clicking on my picture and then clicking on my email address if you wish to attend. We have several in-person meetings in the planning for later this year, as well as many webinars. Until we meet again virtually, have a very geospatial day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, Janelle.